The continent of Africa was a very different region to what we know today. Before the arrival of the Europeans to Africa, the continent was made up of largely independent, self-governed kingdoms and empires. These pre-colonial civilizations acquired their territories through century-old battles and defended their territories jealously with mighty military forces and incredible architecture. The landscape of Africa changed for good following the invasion of Africa by the Western superpowers. In what is commonly referred to as the scramble for Africa, Africa went from having only 10% of the continent under former European control in 1870 to having 90% of the continent under former European control in 1914, within the space of 45 years. At the Berlin Conference of 1884, the Western European diplomats formally agreed the ownership of the African nations that they had carved out. Redrawing the map of Africa, they created new country boundaries out of existing territories, merging former kingdoms with neighboring rivals based on existing resources, ease of access, etc. The idea of nationalism was introduced by colonial powers. In reality, Africa is a continent of over 2,000 tribes and languages. No other continent of the world shares this same cultural diversity. These tribal differences have been the source of many conflicts and civil wars across the continent, even until present day. In this series, we would like to explore the pre-colonial kingdoms and empires across Africa and the world over. Beginning with one of the wealthiest and most politically advanced civilizations, the Mali Empire. If you enjoy and would like to see more of this type of content, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share this video with your networks. The Mali Empire was one of the greatest West African kingdoms that existed from 1235 CE to 1600 CE. The empire is believed to have been founded by King Sunjata, a prince from the Kieta dynasty, a kingdom from Ghana. Sunjata was asked to come to liberate the people of Mali from the rule of the king of Soso Empire, Sumanguru Kante. He then led a rebellion and ultimately defeated Sumanguru Kante, took over as the ruler and made it part of the Mali Empire. Over 4 centuries, Mali extended its territory, its area of influence, and its culture. In addition, the existence of substantial gold reserves and salt deposits within the empire contributed to the expansion of its commercial assets. As a result, Mali gained a reputation as a major trading hub within the sub-Saharan trade markets and routes. In addition to its success as a trading center, the empire was well known for its status as a center of learning and knowledge. The most well-known ruler of the empire was Mansa Musa, who, according to historical accounts, once made a pilgrimage to Mecca, during which he distributed such a large quantity of gold that it caused inflation that lasted for a decade. Mali also became the center for Islamic faith before bad leadership led to the collapse of the empire. After the fall of the Ghana Empire in the 11th and 12th centuries, the Mali Empire started to develop. The Mali Empire began with the merging of several small Munnik kingdoms in Ghana around the areas of the upper Niger River. It is recorded that the empire developed from a state called Kangaba in the upper reaches of the Niger River. During this period, the Munnik inhabitants of Kangaba served as the middlemen in the gold trade, and trade routes had shifted to their area, resulting in the development of states in the region. It is also believed that Sunjata became the first ruler of Kangaba. At the same time, in the neighboring Soso Empire, the people had grown to dislike their king, Sumanguru Kante, because he exercised a harsh and inefficient leadership style. Because of this, they wanted to rebel, so they sent a request to King Sunjata, asking him to come and rescue them for the rule of Sumanguru. Sunjata was victorious in his battle against the Soso ruler. As a result, he was able to incorporate the Soso Empire into the Mali Empire. The conquest of the Soso Empire in 1235 CE gave the Mali Empire access to the trans-Saharan trade routes. After Sunjata took over the former Ghana Empire, he established control while growing the Mali Empire. In his strategy, which expanded the power of the Mali Empire, Sunjata set a standard for future emperors. He led his imperial soldiers to conquer the gold-rich areas of Bondu and Bambuk to retain the region's rich resources, which gave them the power in trade. During his reign, Sunjata developed a huge kingdom that spanned from the coast of the Atlantic Ocean to the east of the Middle Niger Bend and from Goa to the south of the Senegal River in the north. Sunjata Keita then died in 1255, after which the kings of Mali started to be referred by the title Mansa. Following the death of Sunjata Keita, Sakura, who had been a slave in the royal court, took over as the emperor. He went on to become one of Mali's most powerful rulers. Sakura greatly expanded the Mali Empire's territory. Sakura went on a pilgrimage to Mecca at some point during his reign, but died on his way back. The Mali Empire had 2 more emperors before Musa Keita became the first Mansa around 1312. The incident that led to Musa of the Keita dynasty to become the Mansa Musa was intriguing, as he used to serve as the crown prince to Mansa Abubakari II. Abubakari II was a skilled sailor who was interested to discover what was on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. So he sent a 200-ship expedition to find out, but the trip failed. Still not giving up, in 1312, the emperor set sail with 2,000 and 3,000 ships in a second attempt to cross the Atlantic, leaving his reign, power, and abundant wealth. Abubakar II and his fleet never returned, so Musa, who was chosen by Abubakar II as his deputy, succeeded as the new Mansa of the Mali Empire. The Mali Empire's buildings and structures, some of which are still standing to date, such as the Sankora Mosque in the Timbuktu, are amongst the most recognizable aspects of the region. These buildings have become international emblems of Africa's rich pre-colonial heritage. Due to the scarcity of stone in the area, Mali architects were at a significant disadvantage when designing buildings. As a result, most structures were made of beaten earth, banko, reinforced with wood and frequently protruded in beams from the building's exterior surfaces. Despite the limited resources, the mosque in particular are nonetheless impressive multi-story buildings that feature towers, enormous oak doors, and tiered minarets. Other big buildings that were part of the empire included warehouses, which were used to store trade items before they were moved to trading locations. These warehouses typically contained up to 40 apartments that were utilized as living quarters for business people. The Mali Empire was made up of several smaller kingdoms and territories on its periphery. All of these kingdoms swore loyalty to Mali by presenting tributes of rice, millet, lances, and arrows as a sign of their devotion to Mali's rule. The population of Mali contributed significantly to the country's economic growth by paying taxes. These taxes were levied on all items entering and leaving the empire, and the king retained ownership of any gold nuggets. Still, gold dust was a tradable commodity, and it was even used as a currency in addition to salt and cotton at some point in their history. Later, cowrie shells from the Indian Ocean were utilized as currency in Western Sahara's domestic economy. Although Mali was a monarchy ruled by the Mansa, the majority of state power was held by the court officials. This indicated that the empire could endure various unstable periods and have a succession of poor rulers. In addition, the Mali Empire was multi-ethnic and multilinguistic as a result of many people coming for trade in that region. The city had to establish learning centers to teach people different languages so as to communicate better or negotiate with traders from all over the world. Islam became the dominant religion and established a lot of learning centers in the region. The Mali Empire was divided into provinces, and each province adhered to a strict hierarchical structure. Each province was led by a governor, and each town had a mayor who oversaw the municipal government. Massive troops were deployed to stop any potential rebellions in the minor kingdoms and protect the numerous trade routes. The decentralization of power to provinces and towns through the court rulers, together with a strict hierarchical structure, was part of what contributed to the Mali Empire being very stable. Much like its political forebears, the Mali Empire enjoyed economic success due to trade and its strategically advantageous location, which was midway between the tropical rainforests of southern West Africa and the formidable Muslim caliphates of North Africa. The Niger River allowed for convenient access to the interior of Africa and the Atlantic coast. Berber-controlled camel caravans traversed the Sahara Desert and ensured valuable goods were brought down from the north. This advantage made the rulers of Mali to make triple income through taxing passage of trade goods, buying and reselling goods at high prices, and then accessing huge deposits of valuable natural resources which they sold for trade. Timbuktu also served as a semi-independent trade port, with the combined advantage of being located on the bend of the Niger River and at the starting point of the trans-Saharan caravan routes. The port would eventually become monopolized and then seized by the Mali rulers, who would then turn it into one of the most important and most cosmopolitan commercial centers in all of Africa. Ivory, textiles, horses for military use, glassware, weaponry, sugar, cola nuts, grains, spices, stone beads, artisan products, and slaves were amongst the lucrative things that moved through Timbuktu. Goods were either bartered for or paid for using predetermined commodity, such as ingots made of copper or gold, or predetermined amount of salt or ivory, or even cowrie shells. The Malinke people had a long-standing custom of passing down their myths and traditions of the community by oral transmission, with the help of storytellers known as griots. These tales, which were told orally from one generation to the next, and are still being told in this way now, were frequently accompanied by music. Additionally, there were even songs that were exclusively reserved for certain persons, and those people were the only ones who could have these songs played in their honor. This was particularly true for famous warriors and hunters. Music was also an essential component of religious festivals. Pottery and sculpture were also a part of the Mali Empire's art and culture. Sculptures were typically composed of solid earthenware, but also sometimes had an iron rod within them for added reinforcement. In addition to stone, other common materials for sculpting include wood and brass, but the stone was used to a lesser extent. The decoration was usually incised, painted, or incorporated by adding three-dimensional elements. The subjects in the decorations included human figures, most notably bearded warriors on horses, but there were also a great deal of individuals knelt or crouching with their faces turned upward. Figures were frequently depictions of regular people in a realistic manner, and they occasionally exhibited symptoms of tropical diseases. Most of the sculptures were used as everyday decorative elements in addition to being used for ritual purposes. Leadership in the Mali Empire started with Sunjata, who firmly established himself as a brave and strong leader in both the religious and authoritative sense. He built a great empire that extended over vast areas of land. After his death, his son Mansa Musa took over as the next king. Mansa Musa would in turn be succeeded by his brother Wati, who was then succeeded by his brother Khalifa. Khalifa was seen as a bad leader, and the records describe how he used bows and arrows to kill innocent people for entertainment. Because of this misrule, Khalifa was deposed and replaced by a grandchild of Sunjata called Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr would later be deposed in a coup and was succeeded by Sakura. Sakura ruled Mali for a while before he went on a pilgrimage to Mecca and died on his way back. He was succeeded by Abu Bakr II, who would later try to cross the Atlantic Ocean in pursuit of knowing what existed on the other side, but never came back. Mansa Musa was then appointed the ruler. The reign of Mansa Musa I from 1312 to 1337 saw the Mali Empire reach unprecedented heights in terms of how much territory they controlled, cultural florescence, and incredible wealth as a result of its dominance over regional trade routes. The empire grew and thrived as it added more territory and improved its culture, especially in architecture. Mansa Musa I doubled the size of his empire by using his large army. This put the kingdom at the center of trade in Africa, which was good for it. With much control in trade, Mali took advantage of the gold, salt, copper, and ivory and slave business throughout West Africa. This was possible because they acted as the middlemen between North Africa and the Niger River in the south. Muslim merchants were drawn and took part in all of these businesses, and they converted the Mali rulers, who then spread Islam to their people. Mansa Musa I converted to Islam, and in 1324 he decided to make a pilgrimage to Mecca. He was accompanied by over 60,000 people and took an enormous amount of gold with him. His generosity was so tremendous that he gave away so much gold to the people that by the time he left Mecca to go back to Mali, he had used every piece of gold that he had taken with him and had to borrow money to return. This made his story spread worldwide, and Mali became known for its wealth. Mansa Musa I was also known to be a wise and effective leader. One of his greatest achievements was commissioning some of Timbuktu's largest buildings. He constructed the Great Mosque in Timbuktu and also developed the city to become a very important learning center. At the end of his rule, Musa had also built the Sankara Madrasa, the first university in the world, which became one of the best places to learn in the Islamic world and the biggest library in the world at the time, and the original storehouse of the famous Timbuktu manuscripts. Under his rule, Mansa Musa I is believed to have taken over 24 cities and territories around them, eventually growing the empire. He later died in 1337, and his son, Mansa Magan, succeeded him. The Mali Empire started to decline in the 14th century because of internal power struggles and attacks from neighboring kingdoms. The years between 1360 and 1390 were difficult for the empire, as it was troubled by a succession of poor rulers who only held their positions for a brief time. During this time, the throne passed through the hands of numerous members of the ruling dynasty. The rules for royal succession lacked clearly defined procedures, and so civil conflicts frequently broke out between the brothers and uncles competing for the throne. At the same time, the trade routes opened up in the other parts of the region, and several competing kingdoms such as Songhai took over the trade. The kingdom was seized at one point by a man named Mahmud, who neither originated from Mali nor was a member of the royal family. This just indicated how the empire was weakening and outside people were starting to take over. In the end, Mansa Musa II was victorious in his bid to reclaim the throne for the ruling dynasty. Still, his autocratic rule brought the nation to its knees. Sunjata III then took over and restored some of the power and influence it had lost during the misrules. The series of bad rulers saw the empire weaken, and when Mansa Musa II died, it was the end of the line of kings who descended from Mansa Musa I. This resulted in the decline of the Empire of Mali, and in 1433, Tuareg nomads were successful in their conquest of the city. In the following century and a half, the Songhai conquerors from the east would eventually take control of the empire. By the year 1500, it had been shrunk down to only its core Malinke holdings. By the 17th century, Mali had already fractured into several smaller independent chiefdoms, and as a result, the Mali Empire was no longer the dominant global force that it had been during its prime. What remained of the Mali Empire would be absorbed into the Moroccan Empire in the mid-17th century. The territory later fell under French colonial rule to become part of French West Africa. This brings us to the end of our history lesson on the Mali Empire. If you've enjoyed this video, please share with your networks and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see more content like this.